7:02. I will call the meeting to order. Today is Thursday, May 12th, 2022. So the first order of business, we're gonna just adjust the agenda just a bit and move up the audit. Brian, thanks for being here. We don't see your picture anymore, which is totally fine. You don't have to be on camera. There we go. Oh, there you are.
Flickering in my office. Hopefully it's not too dark now.
Oh, no.
Yeah, no, you're good.
You're fine. Thank you for tuning in.
Oh, absolutely. Thanks for having me. Greatly appreciate it. On behalf of SICK, thank you all for inviting us to present the report results from the audit period here ended December 31st, 2021. We should have an annual financial report and then a board communication. They're all standard preliminary, but don't anticipate any changes to them. And when Pam and I talked this week, I had a conflict with the June meeting, and I said, you know, it's perfectly fine to present the draft reports since we know they're not going to change at all. So we'll be wrapping it up and getting you the final report soon. So if we start with the annual financial report, are you working off of hard copies or?
Yes, everyone has hard copy.
Okay, so if you turn to page 1, it says independent auditors report. It's just past the table of contents. So in its final form, this will be on SICK's letterhead. This is where we give our opinion on the financial statements, which is what you're hiring the auditor to do. And in order for us to give an opinion on the financial statements, we're required to follow 2 sets of standards. One are the auditing standards issued by the AICPA, which tells us the types of procedures we need to perform when we're conducting our audit. And then the second set of standards are the financial reporting standards, which come from the Governmental Accounting Standards Board, or GASB. GASB sets the rules for financial statements for local governments such as the library. So we're pleased to present an unmodified opinion. What that means is that the financial statements are presented fairly in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. And this is the highest level of opinion that you can receive on your financial statements. If you were to compare last year's opinion with this year's opinion, it would have the same meaning, but every once in a while the AICPA kind of throws everything up in the air and sees where it falls and tries to make it simpler for people to understand. So the order of things and the language is a little bit different, but it all still means the same thing. So takeaway is unmodified opinion, which means clean opinion, which is a good thing. So, if you turn over to page 4, which is the first audited financial statement, which is the statement of net position. So the statement of net position is a global, what I like to call a global financial statement. It combines all of your funds, your general and your special reserve fund, and then layers on top of it capital assets, like your building, and then long-term liabilities as defined by GASB, which includes your pension liabilities. Comes down to net position. Your unrestricted net position is a deficit due to your MRF liability. It doesn't mean you're operating any different. We'll see that you're funding exactly the way you're supposed to fund it. It's just a function of those liabilities being required to be recorded on the statement. This statement, along with the next statement, the statement of activities, these are the big picture statements that you only see once a year. It's required to receive that unmodified opinion. The positive $628,000 change in net position with 3 lines up from the bottom right side is intended to tell you that the library was economically better off as a result of the year of operations. The following page is more the types of information you use to see throughout the year. The balance sheet on page 6. Yeah, your general fund, the non-major fund is your special reserve fund. The focus here is on fund balance. So after you collect on receivables and make payments on your payables, what's the fund balance or the reserves that you had at the end of the fiscal year? So your general fund balance is $1.8 million, and you had $42,000 in your special reserve. We jump over to page 8. We see the revenues, expenditures, and changes in fund balance for the year. So revenues in your general fund of 3.5 million, expenditures were 4.6 million, but that includes the amount that you, had projects at the building that you borrowed for. It's just that it's grossed up in the expenditure section, and then the borrowing comes back in the other financing sources uses section. So you had 400,000 that came over from your special reserve for the project, and then you drew down $747,000 on the note with the bank. So overall you had an increase of 20,000 in your general fund from 1,791 and to 1,812, and then you had the drawdown on your special reserve for the project from 439 down to 42.
Okay.
If you jump ahead to page 10, that starts the notes to the financial statements. So the job of the notes to the financial statements is to provide more detail to support the financial statements we just went through. So the first note is the summary of significant accounting policies. So all the accounting policies that you follow are all documented in note number 1. We won't go through those in detail, just to kind of give you a footprint, a little bit of what's in the notes. Note 2, specifically note 2A on page 16, talks about deposits with financial institutions, meaning the library's bank accounts. So the library's bank accounts. This discussion talks about custodial credit risk. Custodial credit risk is the risk that if a financial institution that you have deposits at were to go out of business, which you get your money back, $250,000 is FDIC insured, and then over and above that you have collateral pledge. So that if, for example, in your case, Fifth Third Bank went out of business, you would get all your money back because you have collateral pledge to the third party. One of those audit procedures that we perform is to confirm that collateral, which is, I think, at Bank of New York. So all of your deposits were collateralized, and so you're doing exactly what's required in your investment policy. Let's jump ahead to page 33, which is the general fund budget versus actual. So here you see the same actual numbers, just with the budget amounts there as well. Now technically, so when you decided to do the project, you did a budget amendment, so you see the final budget there, upping your authority to spend with the ability to borrow the funds. So you see the original budget as it was adopted, and then the final budget. And then you can see the actual numbers, which would be the same actual numbers that we saw in the front of the report, just a little more detail there. On the following page, page 34, we start to get into some of the pension information. So the employees that, the new employees would go into IMRF. Each and every year, IMRF does an actuarial evaluation that tells you what your employer contribution rate will be. 4.5% comes out of employees' checks each and every payroll, and your the amount that you pay, you're part of the village's overall plan. So the amount you pay in is based on the employees of the library, and for 2021, the contribution rate was 8.15%. 106,000 was the budgetary impact for the library's contributions. On the next page then is kind of like what's the financial health of IMRF. So the village's auditors do a allocation between the village and the library. 24 point, if you look at the far right hand column in 2020, which is the most recent information available, 24.9%, 7% of the salaries in IMRF were the libraries, which means over 75% of the villages. your share of the net pension liability is $112,000. And the bottom line, the far right hand side, the 95.9%, so your plan is 95.9% funded, so very well funded plan. Up from 90% last year, back in 2015 it was 77% funded. So with the really good returns in the market and with IMRF being such a well funded plan, IMRF has done very well. On the next page is the information related to the Municipal Employers Retirement Fund, or the MRF fund. There's not a lot of current payroll left, so just $20,000 of payroll left in the plan. But there is still significant unfunded liability in the plan, and so that's why your employer contributions are still pretty high. So $164,000 in employer was the budgetary impact for the MRF plan. If you go to the next page, you'll see the financial results of MRF. So the total pension liability would be the cost, the anticipated cost of the individual still in the plan, present value back to December 31st, 2020, meaning the benefit payments anticipated in the future, present value back. There was a significant payout during 2020, $784,000. Now that did two things. It reduced the assets in the plan, but it also significantly reduced the liability in the plan. So the liability in the plan went from $2.8 million down to $2.1 million, which is that double underscore, that first double underscored line. So you can see that between 19 and 20. But similarly, your assets went down. If you look at the net position, plan net position ending, which is just a fancy term for assets at market value that are in the plan, those went from $638,000 to $139,000. So your funded percentage of that plan is 6.6%, which you see at the top of page 38. Those are what I would consider the highlights of the audit report. In conclusion, the audit went smoothly and on time. The district staff are very professional and easy to work with. We have to answer any questions that you might have.
I have a question, Brian, more about just kind of the future of the MRF plan and how that will continue to impact us. Obviously no one else is joining it. It's what happens when I'm not. I mean, I'm still gonna have to fund it every year until no one's getting paid out, correct? In any way,
Correct.
shape, or form, okay.
Correct.
And so, what is the
So
best?
there are,
Go ahead.
As of just, I was just looking up, there's 14 total participants in the plan,
Mhm.
of which one is an active, one's an active employee.
Right,
11 are receiving benefits, and 2 are not yet entitled to benefits.
right. So, I always kind of struggle a little bit with how to budget for this because I don't get any information from the plan until after we've passed our budget and stuff. So I'm just trying to get some sense of how I can best make estimations about what I could potentially owe. Does that make sense?
Understood, yes. My best recommendation for that is to see if you can have a conversation with the actuary from Lauterbach and Amon.
Okay,
They should be able to give you estimates of what those future contributions would look like.
okay,
They get updated annually based on how the plan actually does, but at least they could give you a rough idea of what you expect to see that. Now, the last 3 years, it's been somewhere between, 160 and 170,000.
right.
But yes, I would definitely reach out to them.
Is there a scenario where that would go up significantly? Or you're not really not in a position to say?
I wouldn't think so unless there's, you would not think that would go up significantly. But I think they would be able to give you a really good idea because part of what the actuary does is they're projecting what the payments will be in the future.
Right.
On the outflow side, so that helps them determine what the inputs need to be able to cover those benefit payments.
Okay.
So I think they could probably walk you through it really,
Okay.
really easily, and that could be as simple as, having a call with them, or if you want them to come to a board meeting, to have them, kind of walk.
Okay, well, I will do that, because it's like, in the past few years, it's like, I get the information after we've actually done the budget, and I've estimated pretty well what we owe, but especially now, I'm more concerned as there's only one active employee, and I just don't wanna get stuck with, all of a sudden, one year, I have to come up with $300,000 when I've only budgeted for, say, $160,000, that kind of thing.
Completely understand, yes.
Okay, I will absolutely reach out to them. The other question I have, and it's not related to the audit per se, but there is discussion, obviously, about the potential delay in Cook County property taxes.
Yep.
Have you heard much more about that? I mean, I've done some analysis of our funds and stuff like that. I'm thinking we'll be okay for the most part. But I was just curious if you've heard anything more about that from your end or your work with.
Like the same articles in the paper
Okay.
that you all have seen.
Right.
With not really a good definitive timeline.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Which is a little surprising because you would think that
Yes.
there's so many,
There's a lot of agencies that are gonna be affected, and there's not a lot of information about this.
by it, and when I say so many, I mean, it's not just, Morton Grove Library. I mean, I think of governments in the public eye all the time that are very large, that you think of like school districts, you would think would demand to have a date certain
Right.
that the tax bills will go out.
Yeah. Okay. I was just,
So I don't know what kind of political slant any of the articles were written, but they were very vague.
yeah, and they're not very many. I mean, that's the other thing, is it's like, it seems like no one's really talking about it, which is kind of freaking me out a little bit too.
Right, understandably, right? But I would say, if there's other, leaders of other local governments that you have relationships with, if there's a way to, kind of band together and figure out who is, is there a mayor's and managers organization that's going to be, like, trying to get to the bottom of it to get an answer, or, oftentimes those types of organizations.
Yeah, I'll reach out to the administrator. I just thought, since we had you here, and I was just wonder if you had heard anything more about that.
I'd love to be able to say, I was at a seminar.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But I have not heard any new news.
Okay. Awesome, great. But those are the only.
It was big enough information, it hit the Crane's, business in the last month and a half. It didn't have anything definitive other than to say, oh my gosh, Cook County governments.
Yeah.
Look out, because you may need to borrow money to get those things.
Right. Yeah. Okay, those are the only questions I had, again, not specifically regarding the audit, but does anyone else on the board have anything?
Thank you.
Oh, you're very welcome.
Nothing with that? And I did notice that I didn't have to do any response to any deficiencies this year.
Correct, both of the recommendations from the prior year were both implemented, so good job. Just a handful of journal entries, no accounting policy changes. And the journal entries are typical entries that the audit team would help with. Those are on page 5 of the second document. Just as a refresher, this document is like, the first part of it is our required communication, which begins in the letter that's on page 2 through 4. Talks about there were no new accounting policies, that everything we're talking about related to actuary information is all estimates. And that's what actuaries are in the business of doing. On page 3, no difficulties with the audit. One of the last things we'll do is we'll have the representation letter sent over to Pam, and she'll sign that, which basically is saying, hey, we gave you everything that you needed to do your audit. Like I said, page 5 are some journal entries. There's some really complex local government accounting standards that our audit team helps with those entries on 9 out of every 10 audits that we do. Then the management letter would identify any recommendations that we have, and there were no new recommendations this year. And then we have a list on beginning on page 8 of new GASB standards. Excuse me. The only one that should have, or that may have an impact on the library's financials is next year's audit with leases. So the lease standard is kind of vague, but copier leases typically not material to your financial statements, so we probably won't have to follow that standard for any copier leases. I'm not aware of any other.
We actually lease part of the St. Martha's parking lot, the church that's to the north of the library.
Got it.
So I think that's the only other thing, and I think I've sent over information regarding that, because, as a potential for, the future, but I think that's the only other
Excellent.
thing.
So we will evaluate that with
Okay.
the 22.
Yeah.
And then the other standards should not impact any of our libraries, except potentially, it kind of goes hand in hand, subscription-based information technology arrangements. So if you have any software in the cloud, if you will, some of those types of arrangements are going to be handled similar to leases, but we've got another view on that as well. And then, the appendix on page 10 is just saying that both of the prior comments were implemented. It's all good news.
Awesome.
This was the first one you guys fun to read, actually. Any questions for Brian?
I think we're good, Brian. Sounds like you
Excellent.
have been talking for a lot, or not, maybe not
I don't know
feeling
what's
too
going
well.
on. Between allergies and
Yeah.
temperature, regular temperature changes of 40 degrees every week.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's hitting all of us.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for accommodating my schedule. Sorry I couldn't be there in person, but
No problem.
really glad we were able to talk tonight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks, Brian.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Have a good night.
Thanks,
Two.
bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay.
Yeah, I was reading through, I was just like, okay, so it sounds like he likes what we're doing.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like, recording stopped.
Just trying to make sure on the way through. It seems like he's good.
And I think this was the shortest presentation he's given us.
I think so too, yeah. There have been some that have, and not because there were issues, but there have been some where they just have needed to go on for longer,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah, he
That's
took the
awesome.
approach of highlighting it, like.
Yeah, he was.
Yeah,
Very
yeah.
much.
Okay, so we're gonna go back up to where we were, number 2, we never did Pledge of Allegiance, so to be thorough, we'll go ahead and do that now.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I am
Secretary.
the secretary.
Okay, so we'll do roll call.
Flores is not here. Gonzalez not here. Hussein.
Here.
Jost. Here. Mesa Jack.
Here.
Cheers. Puzo. Here.
Next, I will make a motion to approve the regular board meeting minutes from April 14th, 2022.
Couple of things. Could you add me in as those answering roll call?
Yes, I can do that. Just this. For,
So with those answering roll call,
Right at the
Red
beginning
top,
of the
the
meeting.
third,
yeah.
oh,
then there's one typo under staff reports. Butler gave and dates, and third line.
is there another? Just these two, okay.
Okay, so the motion will be approving the regular board meeting minutes as amended.
All those in favor of approving the minutes as amended, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
And next, I'll make a motion to approve the special board meeting minutes from April 14th, 2022.
I'll second.
Thank you. So the special board meeting was the walkthrough, basically.
Any discussion? All those in favor of approving the special board meeting minutes of April 14th, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Okay. Next, public comments, agenda items only. It's just us here. President's report. Well, Chad's already gone, but I want to wish him the very best of luck in his next chapter. We will miss him, but really big congratulations to Karina. That's an awesome fit, and I know that she's gonna rock that.
Yes.
And congrats to Gregory too. So that's exciting too. So
It's nice to be able to promote from within.
Oh, totally,
When we've
yeah.
got really super well-qualified candidates. So
Yeah.
we didn't interview for the manager position for marketing engagement because it was
Yeah.
I don't think we would have gotten anyone better than Karina. And to be able to reward the hard work and dedication that she's had to the library in the 15 years that she's been here and everything that she does. Yeah, she started as a program assistant, so back in the day, she would help out with like movies and different things like that, and then just had a variety of positions since then, and so to be able to reward that to someone who's so deserving, and
Yeah.
I'm just really super excited, and she is just over the moon, and she and Bettina have already discussed this, and Bettina gave her full support behind that even before I had offered it to Karina. She came in and she said, if you're considering that, she goes, I'm 100% behind that, and so, and they're both just really excited by the changes that we'll be able to make and kind of the growth of that department and different things we're able to do. So, yeah, we're all really excited. And Gregory, we interviewed other people and he just really was able to step right in and stuff like that. So I think, a great opportunity for him too. So, because he had been looking for full-time employment, but really wanted to stay here because he loved the library and everything. So it's nice to be able to do that. So,
it's ideal when you can do that.
yes.
So, and well done to you to support Karina in allowing her to grow her skills and feel confident.
I was so, because Chad actually called me on vacation, because he had texted me and he says, do you have a minute, and so I called him and he wanted to let me know because he was only giving about 3 weeks of notice and stuff, and he said, I don't want you to come back from vacation and be, blindsided by this. So I had been thinking, and, I didn't know if that was something that Karina would be interested in doing because she has such a, her background is graphic design, and I didn't know if she wanted to get away from that, and, because when she moved into management, it's a little bit different. So when I found out, that was something that she was interested in, it was a no-brainer decision. So I was so happy to be able to do that for her as well. So, yeah, I'm excited to see what the future will hold.
It's a great fit.
Yeah.
For Chad, was there any exit interview?
We did an exit survey since I typically try to do that if any of my managers leave. I don't have a lot of them leave unless they're gonna retire, or I haven't had, because I thought if he was unhappy with me, he might feel uncomfortable saying to me, well, Pam, I really started looking because I can't stand you kind of thing, right? But, so he filled out an exit survey and everything was really lovely, and he said some really lovely things about his previous manager, Natalia Fishman, head of adult services, and then myself as well. So it was really gratifying and stuff, but, so he did fill out a survey.
Okay, wonderful. So there was nothing like, and by the way, since I'm leaving, this is what grinds my gears. And
Yeah, no, and his resignation letter was absolutely lovely as well. I'm just really thankful for, you know, the opportunity he had to work with really wonderful people and serve the community and try a bunch of different things. And I think for him, it was, he was not really actively looking. I think it was just something, I don't know how he found out about that because it is not in libraries where he's going. And I think that some of the reason was also financial. So, yeah, so he's the primary breadwinner in his household, and you know, they have a small child. I think they're trying to have another small child, another child, those kinds of things. So I think that, and where he's going is a significant salary increase for him. So not something that we would be able to match. But I don't think he was not, and that's what he said. He was, I don't want you to think I was actively looking or anything like that. So, yeah.
And do what's best for your family.
Yeah, and you know, a way for him to use skills that he's developed and you know, over the past couple of years in a different way. So I think it'll be really an exciting opportunity for him too.
Yeah, I do 7 years. That's a pretty
Yeah.
good run too.
Yeah. So he started out as an adult services librarian, but you know, so we'll miss him. But I'm super excited for him and his family. And
That's how you want chapters to close, like it was a good
Exactly.
experience and I'm grateful for it,
Right.
and on to the next
Yeah.
thing, not like, you know, I hate you all,
Right.
you know.
You know,
so.
and we talk about this a lot here. I mean, it's like, because of the size of the library and stuff, there aren't a lot of ways that people can be kind of growing. I mean, beyond professional development, those kinds of things, but there's not a lot of room for advancement just because of the size, right?
Right.
So, I mean, I completely understand if people leave to take, you know, for other, you know, there are other positions that they want to take or something like this, you know, use his skills in a different way. But, you know, my thinking has always been, then let's, you know, utilize the talent of these great people while we have them here and wish them luck and create this great basis for them to go on and do bigger and better things. So I think most people that leave are employed and go to either other libraries or, you know, jobs outside of libraries. People love working there. I mean, they really do. And, you know, and that's really gratifying to me that, you know, we've been able to create an environment that people feel supported and stuff like that. So I can think of one instance in the last, like when I was here the first time and then this time where someone left because they were unhappy. Mostly it's, you know, if they're unhappy, it's with, you know, there's not somewhere I can move up and still stay and what, you know, like they love their colleagues, they like the community, they like the library, that kind of thing. It's an opportunity for a lot of the staff to try different things, you know, a lot of different things, particularly some of our professional staff, you know, they come in and we're very supportive of that, and I know people appreciate that, so. Though it's hard to lose good people, but, you know, we've got good people stepping up and yeah, so.
Yeah. All right, so we're gonna move on to committee reports. Were the finances reviewed? Would you like to table that?
I mean, I can answer any questions if the board has. Carlotta did come in this morning and look things over and sign the checks, because first she was gonna be here, and then just today she told us that her granddaughter was in a play or something tonight. So, I don't know if anyone has questions. I did want to say, I'm happy to answer questions, but kind of to go along with the questions that I asked Brian, I did do a little bit of analysis on our finances to try to anticipate what we could potentially, you know, the trouble we could potentially be in towards the end of the year if the tax bills don't go out. I think I mentioned in my report that I feel that we will be okay with no additional revenues through November. I think if things continue after that, we probably have to move the money that's in PMA right now, which is all liquid, I believe it's all liquid. So it would only take a day or two to get. You would probably have to utilize those funds. No, I'm sorry, it's 300,000 is liquid right now, but by October, right, because the last CD we have will mature in October. And unless the tax bills have gone out, I will not reinvest that, and that's why I held off on reinvesting any of it, with the renovation and other things going on. But certainly for this, my concern is that, there's always issues with trying to borrow the money, but I don't know, since we borrowed money to do the renovation, my concern is that if all of a sudden we get to the end, I don't know that we'd be able to borrow the money because, we'd already done that. But I feel like with the monies that we have currently in our operating account, which we there's always extra in there, which is the reserves, we should be fine through November. If it goes out longer than that, then I would ask the board to transfer the monies in PMA to our operating account so that we can continue to fund the library. So I don't feel that we'd have to make any significant cutbacks in either services or programs. Certainly, I don't think that we would have to lay anyone off or anything like that. But those are the kinds of things that I'm thinking about already. So I know I brought this up with the board last month, so I did want to say that I'm doing some more analysis. It was really kind of visually eye-opening for things redundant, but so I was creating this monster spreadsheet, and I went back and I looked at all of the tax income we had gotten since 2019, and then every month's expenditures. And so when on my spreadsheet where I was tracking all the tax income, last year when the bills were a month late going out, July and August were completely blank. We got nothing. So it was August and September. Either way, but to see that kind of big hole when just 1 month delay in the tax bills, I thought, okay, that's what I can anticipate. If there's, a 3 months or 4 months, that hole's going to be even bigger, that there's just going to be no tax funds coming in, even trickling in those months, based on what I've seen. So it's kind of surprising to me. It's very surprising to me that there just isn't more information about this out there. So I haven't reached out to Ralph or anyone at the village yet, and so that
It's curious that they have that same information that you have.
Right, and that's exactly it. There's just been no information out there, and every once in a while there's like a little bit about, it's this person's fault, or whatever, and I'm like,
It's
yeah,
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't really care at
It's
this
like, just
point.
fix it.
Let's just.
It will be important at some point,
Yeah,
we should
yeah.
know whose fault this was, but in the meantime, what can we
yeah.
expect?
From what I have read, it's the reason that there is a delay is that they revamped the software to send out the bills, which had to have been done, right? At some point, and I think that the county had kind of kicked the can down the road for a while, and the most recent, our current Cook County assessor finally, said, okay, we have to do something, and then, just a delay in that. That's my understanding, so we will see. I'm, thinking about it all the time, and, tracking it, but I feel fairly confident that we should be okay.
And looking
We'll
at
see.
percentage used of our income statement, that's good too, because
We're usually pretty good about
not
staying
even
on.
up to where we could potentially.
Right.
So that's a positive.
Yeah.
I'm sorry that you're carrying that silent stress.
No, it is what it is, right? It's.
I like the way you took a creative approach and analyzed the bejesus out of it all.
Well, I
It
have
makes us feel
general,
good.
I have a general idea, and I thought, I probably should look at the data to make sure that my general feeling is correct, and it was, so.
Well, especially because I would have assumed a 1 month delay in the bill would mean a 1 month delay in receiving the levy, but you found that it was 2 months.
Right, so when
So,
you look at that, it's
Planning for worst
really
case scenario, you
interesting.
doubled
Yeah.
everything, which
Yeah.
is.
So, and I'm just trying to anticipate, looking at what tax monies we've gotten in so far. I analyzed it through April, the end of April this year. So if I look at subsequent years, we did still get things in May. So it'll just depend. That has really varied, the amount that we've gotten in May, quite a bit, from anywhere from like 300,000 to 43,000, right? So I'll just have to see what we'll get in May. And then I'm planning on, after that, that would probably be the last monies we'll really see significantly.
Could the village hold back on that, just to kind of protect their own budgets and kind of distribute as much to the library?
The village doesn't do it, the Cook County does. The village levies our tax for us, but when the county sends it out, they send it directly to us. It goes directly into our bank account. It doesn't go to the village and the village pass it on to us. It comes directly to us. So, yeah, so I mean, what we get is what we get. So like I said, I feel fairly confident in saying that we'll be okay. I mean, and like I said, I think I told you that I talked to the managers about this a while ago. We had our staff in service day where, you know, it was like, the afternoon was department reports, and it was really fun, and, you know, people were laughing, and I finished out the day with the less fun stuff as admin. But I did tell all staff, you know, the staff, and we had probably, I don't know, 95% attendance, so it was really good, that, you know, our situation, that this could potentially impact some of, you know, our purchasing ability, that kind of thing. But just so people were aware that if I come back and say, hey, you know, stop buying books right now, right? Here's that they get it, that it won't be the first time that they're hearing about it and stuff, so, yeah. But like I said, I'm feeling pretty good, and obviously, I mean, you guys, I'm not seeing anything that you guys aren't, but I'm maybe paying more attention to it, so if I hear anything different or whatever, and like I said, I will reach out to Ralph and some other people if I can, and see if there's more that they've heard that they're just not sharing, but I think, as Brian said, I think we're all kind of hearing the same little bits of information right now, so. Anyway, so I don't know if anyone has any other questions about the finances.
Well, here, let's go ahead, I'll go ahead and, first let's open it, so I'll make a motion to approve the financial reports for April 2022. Okay, so, I mean, especially with Carlotta, you know that Carlotta has her eagle eye, so, so general ledger, any questions? Check register.
Suzanne was really, I let her know that she didn't have to come today, but she normally tries to make some notes about things in case people have questions, so she left me all her notes.
Oh, did she?
In case somebody had questions. I usually know what most things are for, but sometimes I
Is there anything she thought needed explanation? I see some writing there.
Yeah, the only thing is, you know, she tries to anticipate questions that the board may have, like either on bigger expenditures, or, you know, more frequent expenditures or something like that, so things
I
like.
had a little question about cooperative computer services, 6360.
Mhm.
It looks like they've used up half of what they're
On the income
allotted.
statement.
Oh, on the income
So is that
statement, okay.
gonna be slowing down, or? is it-
No, so CCS, that's CCS, that's our membership to CCS, and they bill us quarterly. So, so this was the second quarterly bill, so we'll get 2 more, and then.
Got it.
Yeah. So that was on the income statement.
If we're picking on the big ticket items, how about 6190, outsourced solutions group,
That's,
23,000.
yes. That,
There were 2 others
for them.
earlier.
Which number was it?
What was that?
6190, yeah.
I think it says a few before it, with for the same.
Yes.
Yeah,
What's
so
that one?
they're
Yeah,
at 6158, and at 6135, they got almost $4,000.
Yeah, so, I will need to look into that, because that's not one that she made a note of, and so I'm wondering, let me look into that. So, I will look into that. We did have, oh, I know. So it is probably a bill, it is more than likely a bill, that includes, 15 replacement computers, That had been approved, purchase for those had been approved at previous meetings, but that the bill, we get billed when we get them, or
Okay, so
once
it's the
they're
group
ordered.
that's doing the,
Yes, Outside Solutions Group is OSG, that's our IT.
okay.
So that is what that is for. So that bill includes those 15 computers. So you'll see a lot of bills for outsource because they manage our IT. But also, anytime we purchase any hardware or anything like that, it goes through them. So they're kind of the pass-through. So it looks like we're paying them, hundreds of thousands of dollars when in fact we're paying them our managed fee, and then any cost for purchase of new hardware. All of our Microsoft licensing fees go through them. Our, server licensing fees go through them. The wireless stuff goes through them. So there's a lot of things that go through them because they manage our IT environment. This large one is mostly for hardware though, because we have 15, actually we had 15 new desktop computers, and then we got, because we had some things that died, we had to replace our OPEC computers with particular mini ones, so there's a lot of hardware that is.
Maybe Ryan, you mentioned that in your annual report.
Pardon
So,
me?
You mentioned that in your
Yeah.
annual report, so that's what that is.
Mhm.
Those 15 or 17.
Yeah, so it may seem, I mean, you will see them a lot because
They do a lot.
they do a lot, and the billing, they're able to consolidate the bills for some of what they do, but there's still some things that have to be billed out separately because of the agreements that they have with the vendors and jobbers and stuff. So that's why we get, there's fewer of them. It seems like we're getting them all the time, but we do have a tendency to get a lot of bills for them just because they do a lot, and not all of it can be combined in one bill.
Makes sense.
What is OCLC?
OCLC is the kind of worldwide catalog, so like WorldCat, if you've ever heard of that or seen that on the catalog or in the database listings or whatever. So we upload our holdings to, it's kind of a union list, if you will, and so libraries across the country and the world can see holdings for various libraries.
And what is Morningstar?
Morningstar is an investment database.
Okay. Any other questions? Check register, the income statement.
I think
I just touched on, yeah.
Yeah, to kind of segue off what, Lina had said earlier too, I do this all the time. Areas where you're seeing like higher expenditures, oftentimes those are gonna be, because we only pay those bills once or twice a year or quarterly or something like that. So they can seem like they're higher, but, in the next, ensuing months, that percentage will even out a little bit.
And it also helps me to look at the total,
Yeah.
Right.
So if
Yeah.
it looks along where.
Right, yeah, yeah, I look, it's obviously, because we don't want to go over in any one area as much as we can, but, the bigger number is this, is where we, what is our overall percentage of expenditures versus where we're at the year,
Yeah.
so. I will take a roll. Hussein?
Here.
Right. You're voting on approving.
Oh, I'm so
financials. That's
sorry.
okay.
So you're taking a roll.
Yeah.
Yeah, approve, let's move
Okay.
it.
Tamara?
Yes.
Lisa Jack?
Yes.
Who's up?
Yes.
Facilities, we'll touch on that, under unfinished business. Policy, I don't think you guys meet.
We have one coming up.
Okay, I think a meeting is coming up.
What it is, but
Yeah.
a couple months.
Yeah.
All right, so staff reports, we touched on some stuff.
Yeah, I don't really have anything to add. Like I said, I did want to talk a little bit more about the tax issue. We've discussed some of the personnel issues not issues, but the personnel changes, if you will. But I think, I will say too, probably the other big thing, I touched on it a little bit in my report, is we have seen an increase as in COVID cases. seems to have affected the circulation department the most. So, and because people had already asked for some time off when Jeff was getting married soon and different things like that. So, and you know, he had someone that was picking up a lot of shifts here and there to cover for an absence for someone else, and then that person got sick and stuff. So it's been, you know, so we're just monitoring it and talking a lot, but like I said, particularly with Jeff about, you know, kind of what's the minimum number of staff that can serve there. I think some of it is that the staff gets really concerned if, you know, they want to do their jobs and they want to do them well, and you know, so I told Jeff this, we just talked about this yesterday, that, you know, I said, if you're down to 2 or but 1 person, I said, you know, and something isn't shelved for 24 to 48 hours, that's not the end of the world, right? So,
Right.
And then I reminded everyone, just yesterday as well too, that we do still have the temporary sick leave policy that applies to everyone, and you know, encourage people that if they're not feeling well to utilize that, because certainly we would rather have them be out than them to come in and then potentially infect someone, not only with COVID, but with anything, right? So I mean, it makes really good to that. So that was the only other thing. But so far we're doing okay, and fingers crossed we're kind of over that little flurry of you know, potential or that flurry of absences. But you know, you don't know. And just reminding people that most of us are wearing our masks all the time when we're in the building. To get off to talk to Brian, but and a lot of patrons are still. So I haven't made that required. But then I reminded staff too to just be mindful of, you know, what they do outside the library and how it could impact their coworkers and stuff. I mean, I have no control over what people do when they leave the building. So, but yeah. But I think the other things that we talked about, that was it, unless someone has a question specifically on my report or anything else like that.
I thought it was interesting that there was emergency preparedness being talked about.
Yeah. So I should have brought it
I kind
down.
of wondered what kind of emergency preparedness.
You know, fire, tornado, injuries.
Not somebody storming the building.
Well, we talk about that too.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's all part of it. So, what we
The
did.
world we live in now.
Yeah, what we did was we had an emergency procedures manual, and we had a manual that was old and very wordy, excuse me, and then a lot of anything updated was like on our staff intranet. Well, if you know the power's out, how do you look up what you do on the staff intranet kind of thing? So we created, I should have brought it down here, a flip chart that's at 12 different locations throughout the building. So it's like, here's what to do with the elevators out. Boom, boom, boom. Here's these 3 bullet points. Flip the chart up. Here's what you do if it's a fire emergency. Those kinds of things. So, I mean, it goes through, I think like 16 different types of emergencies, kind of ranging from really minor, like the power is out, to the elevator's out, someone's trapped in the elevator, there's a fire emergency, there's a tornado, there's a bomb threat, there's a soft lockdown, hard lockdown, those kinds of things, you know, code atoms. So we went over all that, and it was nice because, like I said, most of the staff was here. We went over they had a handout. It was kind of not a first draft, but it was not quite a finished product, so that we could get feedback from everyone. So that was really helpful. And I know I've gotten lots of feedback from staff that they thought that was really good to do that, because it had been a couple years since we had had an opportunity to meet in person and really do something like this. And then with the renovation and those kinds of things. So, and this was a marked change from the way that we had presented that information to them and made that available. So now every service desk and like some of the offices and stuff have this flip chart. And really what I wanted to do as well was to kind of empower all staff to be able to make some of those decisions about reacting in an emergency situation. Because, you know, if there's a fight on the main floor, don't wait and try to call me, right?
Yeah.
To say call 911 kind of thing. Or Pam wasn't here, or I'm in my office and I don't know, right? That kind of thing. So, you know, we had a lot of reliance on what we called librarian in charge, and you know, especially, and then other things like when we had like a fire emergency, they had the building divided up into zones, and we had to report to different people, and it was just very confusing. And we kind of set ourselves up for failure because we made it unnecessarily complex. So we tried to really simplify that and really empower staff to make those decisions in an emergency situation. Because, you know, I said, first of all, don't lose your common sense when you walk in the building, but also, you know, you may be experiencing something that I'm not going to see, or a manager's not gonna see or something like that. So don't wait to try to say, yeah, you know, if there's a fire, call the fire department kind of thing. I mean, that's kind of extreme, but you know, that level of you know, just saying, you're all grown-ups, we trust your judgment, that was part of why we hired you in the first place to have these different roles, and so that it's okay to use that, and so yeah, it was good, but we do cover all those types of things, and I mean, we have to think about it, as Emily said, that's the world we live in, we're a public building, we're one of the few public places that anyone can come into, and we're very fortunate, we don't have a lot of instances with, you know, violence or anything here in the community, I mean, certainly here in the library, but you never know, so. And the other thing too is that, you know, our thinking and kind of creating this flip chart is this idea that if you're really in an emergency situation like any of those things, you're scared, you know, your adrenaline is you know, skyrocketing, you're freaking out, you're not gonna wanna read a bunch of stuff, you know, so you just wanna be able to grab something kind of from the book, say, these are the 3 things I need to do.
Yeah.
So hopefully no one will ever have to use any of it, but you know, those things happen,
That's
right?
nice to fire, yeah.
Right.
Just feel more secure now
Yeah.
with your fingers.
Yes, exactly.
Any additional questions or comments for? All right, so we'll move on. So unfinished business, so as you all, I'm sure, you know, gathered by now, we did push back our walkthrough. We did feel it was important, you know, Pam and I did discuss this earlier this week, that Ed should be here. I think his perspective would be really valuable. You know, you and him look at this building every day, and
But, you know, he knows that.
right,
Yeah.
and so that way we can kind of, he can kind of, in his own words, kind of tell us what he sees and areas of concern, or, you know, that kind of thing. So, the goal is, you know, that schedules and weather permitting, you know, which, you know, it's Chicago, so everything should be fine. So, you know, would be before the June meeting, which is June 9th. Yeah, second Thursday, yes it is, okay.
We're actually, so Ed is on vacation this week, that's why he's not here, so, he's due back Monday. The other reason that I had suggested to Emily that we push this off is that SFC is doing a facilities assessment for us, so we are actually scheduled to meet with the engineer on May 18th, and so I should have a better idea after that if they'll have, I think that they should be able to have the facilities assessment to the board by that meeting, which I think would be helpful
Really
as well.
thorough way to kind of
As
look at
we look at things,
Yeah.
yeah, so that was kind of the other reason that we were looking to, but I will double check with John Shales from Shales McNutt to make sure that we will have that document before June, so.
Yeah, so we'll send a reminder to, you know, that,
Yeah,
you know, just to make sure that everyone's scheduled.
yeah.
Yeah, May is kind of crazy, with the kids and everything like that, so, not that June is less crazy, but, you know, hopefully not.
Hopefully it comes out.
Could you remind me, when is the July meeting?
July 14th.
July 14th.
Mhm.
All right, so I'm gonna be out of town.
On the 14th.
Yeah, that whole middle of the month there.
But June, you'll be fine.
June 9th is my daughter's birthday. I'm gonna try to see if we can push things around, because I don't wanna miss 2 meetings in a row. Let's see, if my wife is working, we might not celebrate it until the weekend anyways.
Okay.
So, I'll find out though.
We don't have to do the walkthrough on June 9th, because it is a special board meeting
Right.
anyway.
But it's annoying
So-
for you guys to have to bring everybody back together on a separate day.
I mean, it doesn't matter for me, and it doesn't really
Yeah, 'cause
matter so
you're
much
here.
for Ed. I mean, I'll be here whenever I have to be here. So the reason that we started doing it that way is that this was a day that the board had, you know,
Already
Already
booked out their
cleared
schedule.
booked out their schedule, that kind of thing. So we try to, you know, I try to work with what is best for everyone. So you just let me know if you think that'll end up being a conflict.
She's 6, and I bet she'd love to celebrate her birthday a day early.
There we
So,
go.
I mean,
Okay,
we see that
but
was
if for
the
some
worst
reason that,
case
that
scenario,
will,
we'll go
will
from
change,
there.
just
I
let me
mean,
know.
we could
so.
send like an email out to the whole board, and if it's looking like it's not working
Yeah.
for multiple people, then we could potentially move the meeting.
I can,
a
I
week later or
can
something
do
like
that,
that, you know.
tomorrow or next week, whatever, I can
Yeah.
send an email out to the board and say, we're postponing this till June, this is our tentative plan, what does this look like for you, and then see what kind of feedback we get.
Okay. So, well, new business we already did with the audit, communications, none, except for, the awesome graphic that we always get from
Yes.
Karina, so cool. All right, public comments, non-agenda items, still just us. So, I have 8:03, I have. Meeting adjourned.